Okay, welcome back to another edition of the Penn State Blitz from Penn Live. Bye-week special. Penn State's off, but we got a lot to get to. We're going to look at the Lions' offense, the good and the bad surrounding that. We're going to look at Penn State's defense, what went right, what went wrong. We're going to get a recruiting update, and as always, it's the Penn State Mailbag. Okay, Greg, 3-0 at the break. The Pitt Panthers and Pat Narduzzi. We always have to mention Pat Narduzzi now when we talk about the Pittsburgh Panthers.
Yeah.
He's sensational. That was a tight game.
Mm-hmm.
Pitt played as hard as they possibly could. Penn State fought them off. Gallant goal line stand late in the game.
Mm-hmm.
Questionable decisions, but that's another story. They're 3-0. Bye week, and then a Friday night game at Maryland, which should be interesting to kick off, the Big Ten season. But let's just kind of review what we've seen the first quarter of the regular season. Let's start with the offense. They've scored a lot of points, at least in the first two games, shut down a little bit by Pittsburgh, or a lot by Pittsburgh. What were the things you liked most? And then we'll follow it up with maybe some things they got to work on.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that jumped out to me was they definitely have four running backs that they should feel comfortable with. I think that can be a bit of a problem, though. I think we'll get into that in a little bit. But, one thing that really jumped out to me from just looking at the three games as a whole, Bob, is that Sean Clifford, I think, is really close to connecting on some big plays. Yeah. And if you want to take some gripes with the fact that he missed some receivers down the field in the Pitt game that would have made that game a lot more comfortable of a win, let's be honest, how many had to be at least two touchdowns that were overthrown in that contest. But you can look at it another way. He's not spiking the ball into the turf. He's, the arm's there, and it looks like just based on the fact how many times we've seen KJ Hamler and Jahan Dotson or one of those guys and Pat Fryermuth in the same spot on the field.
Yeah,
there's some things that need to be worked out there. It's not just Sean Clifford's fault, and I think if they used a bye week to do that, this Penn State offense should look a little bit smoother on Friday night against Maryland next week.
Yeah, also 0 interceptions for Sean Clifford. Yeah. He had one in the red zone overturned in the first half of the Pitt game. They called, I think, interference. Somebody interfered with
That's right, yeah.
Wasn't a great throw, but it turns out there was a reason for it. I also think the fact that he can impact the game with his legs, that was kind of a concern from a lot of the fans over the summer trying to replace Trace McSorley. He got a little. He was a little feisty about that. He said, I ran in high school. I can do this. When I got here, I was running 4.8s. Now I'm in the 4.5s. And he said, I'm looking forward to showing the fans that I can run with the ball. He can. He's made some plays with his feet. That's huge. I want to touch on the running back rotation. I do think that Penn State is now at the point where they have to rethink how they're going to deploy that rotation, or they got to tighten it up. To me, Journey Brown and Noah Cain are now their two best options running the ball. I think Ricky Slade's got some talent, no question. He made a big play in the passing game. I think Devin Ford is a little behind the first two, but I think Penn State does himself a disservice when one of those two, Brown or Cain, are not on the field. And I think that hurt them late in the game against Pittsburgh. They had the wrong guy on the field when they wanted to run their 4-minute offense, Greg. It should have been Cain. Franklin acknowledged that is a coaching issue. They can't afford to do that.
No, you took the words right out of my mouth, and I know we need to get to the offensive line, but they didn't have the best guy behind them either. And it's inexcusable for James Franklin to be a 6th-year head coach and Ricky Ronnie to be a 2nd-year offensive coordinator. Jaywan Sider's been around the game a long time. Tyler Bowen's a guy who was an offensive coordinator at Fordham. He's another voice on that sideline, almost a voice of Ricky Ronnie in a way on that sideline. And for James Franklin to come into that media room after the game and say, the first thing we talked about on the headset was we probably should have had Cain in there. It's not like this is the first game, and it's not like they haven't talked about before that he's their guy in short yardage and he's their best guy to really run through the middle of the field with. So that you're right. It's a coaching blunder that they just can't afford moving into Big Ten play.
Right. The offensive line, Rasheed Walker, left tackle, 3 starts. I think one of the most interesting things about the offensive line is we heard a lot about C.J. Thorpe at the start of the year. He starts the first game, and it's been Mike Miranda the last 2 games at right guard. I still think there's some things that need to be kind of sifted through there. Just your thoughts on the offensive line play. I'll just say this, that it looks like they've struggled in pass protection against a couple of different blitzes. Pitt got them early in the game. It looked like they struggled with maybe movement. How would you look at the offensive line?
Yeah, I mean, CJ Thorpe, if you go back and watch that Pitt game, I think he had about 6 pancake blocks. But at this point, it's the same as it's ever been with this group. There's times they look really good. I mean, that drive with Noah Cain behind them was, I would say, by far the best drive of the season. I mean, they've had some real quick scoring.
Meaningful, game hanging in the balance, absolutely.
But then there's times where it looks like, and I think both of the sacks were probably on Sean Clifford. I think the one he held on to too long, and the other one he got outside of the pocket, probably should have thrown it away, did not. So I don't know how much of the blame you want to put on the line for those. But again, I think it's still just too Jekyll and Hyde-ish in the sense that there's times these guys look like this is the line Penn State fans have been waiting for 5, the better part of 4 or 5 seasons now. And then there's times when it looks like they just aren't developing maybe the way that we thought they would.
Yeah, and the offensive line, Penn State has been fortunate. The first 2 teams they played, just not deep enough, not fast enough. That they kind of wore them down. They're going to play a lot. I think they're going to play quite a few teams that are better than Pittsburgh, and they're going to have to play on the road. The saying goes, bad lines, offensive lines don't travel well. I'm just saying this team has going to have to be able in the second half to run the ball. And I don't know that they're quite there yet. I think Matt Limegrover has some stuff to kind of get fixed. But I do agree. Sean Clifford did, I think, maybe there were some situations where he knows he's got to throw the ball away. He didn't do it. Cost them some field position. Just real quick, Greg, Freiermuth and Hamler, it just seems to me that when they're involved in the game early or when they're involved on third down, Penn State's an awful tough offense to match up with. Do you feel like they've gotten the ball enough in the first 3 games?
No, I mean, you saw they missed Handler a couple times. Yeah. So I think the barometer or the benchmark here is the Citrus Bowl, right? Yeah. Where he was only targeted 2 times. Yeah. I don't have the targets in front of us, obviously, but they tried to get him involved and it just didn't work out. Freiermuth, on the other hand, I believe he had 1 catch for 16 yards. He was targeted 2-3 times at most. So one thing that's always a little bit concerning listening to James Franklin after some of these games or during his Tuesday news conference is that he'll often talk about how well the opponent executed their plan. Yeah. And it feels far too often, Bob, Penn State doesn't enforce its will and its plan onto its opponent. And with a young team like this that has a couple guys who are budding stars and a couple guys who you can make the case are already stars, you have to make your opponent deal with them. And it's not good enough to say, well, their plan was to take those guys out of the game, and they did, and that's why we only threw it twice to Pat Freiermuth. James Franklin didn't say that, but that might be something you hear down the road. So to me, I think if Penn State's going to take the next step that they've been talking about taking, they have to, again, enforce their will on their opponent.
Yep. Okay, let's go to the defense. They gave up some yards to Pickett, the Pittsburgh quarterback, this past Saturday. Bottom line, though, is when they had to make the plays, they did. They only gave up 10 points. They've only given up 30 all year. As you look at this team and this defense and the way that Brent Pry has coordinated it, what are maybe some of the highs for you and what are some of the lows?
Yeah, I think there's nowhere else to start but the run defense, right? I mean, these guys have did Buffalo get them a few times? Yeah, but that running back and that offensive line is good. Yeah. Let's not beat around the bush and say, oh, it's Buffalo. It is, but he was the returning MAC player of the year. That's a pretty veteran offensive line. Right. They're going to get a lot of teams this year, I think. So, that was notable, I guess you could say. Obviously the effort against Pitt, 24 yards on 25 carries. They made Pittsburgh one-dimensional, and Kenny Pickett probably played the game of his life. I mean, I didn't agree with much of what Pat Narduzzi had to say after the game, but he said it was an all-conference effort from Kenny Pickett. And how do you argue with that? But when you force him to throw 50 times, you're going to get your stops eventually. You're going to pressure him eventually, and Penn State was able to do that, especially on the fourth quarter, 4 down goal line stand that ended with the missed field goal. So that's obviously encouraging. But, again, if you face 50 pass attempts, you're going to give up some sacks. I think you're going to give up some yards. But I think the most eyebrow raising thing is that James Franklin was asked recently if he thought his defensive line was making the impact that he thought it would, and it's not playing bad, but Bob, 50 dropbacks and 3 sacks, they were close. I mean, they were close a number of times, and credit to Pickett for getting the ball out, but they talked all offseason about this group being a big strength. I think it's showing up in some non-statistical ways, but it has to start showing up on the stat sheet sooner rather than later.
Yeah, so the defensive ends were buzzworthy in the offseason. Etor Gross-Matos, he's probably going to be a first-round pick next year, or if not first-round pick.
You're just saying that because you want to go to Las Vegas for the draft.
Early second. So, and you look at some of the guys, just their testing numbers in the winter workouts. Jason Owe, Shaka Toney's bigger. Shane Simmons is healthy. 4 defensive ends. They like a couple of their younger ends as well. So the expectation, and James kind of created it too. Like James, at every turn, James was talking about the defensive end group. Deepest, most talented group I've ever been around. So the bar was set way high. I would say this about the defensive ends. I don't necessarily think that they're playing badly.
Right.
I see them getting into the backfield. They're not finishing. Like if you look at the Pittsburgh game, Shaka Toney was in the backfield the whole game. He could have had 2 or 3 sacks. He just missed the strip sack in the red zone. He only had 1 sack, but I still think he's playing well. I think you have to give the credit to the quarterback for stepping up and just avoiding plays. I don't think the defensive tackles have been bad. I just think this defensive line is still experiencing a couple of growing pains. I think a guy like Jason Owe, some teams have gotten him because he's a wide rusher. They've run inside of him. I think this group's going to get better. I think PJ Mustipher's played well. I think Windsor's played well. I look for them to actually start to play a lot better than they have now. The linebacker group, I thought Micah and Cam Brown were really, really good against Pittsburgh. They're tough to match up with because of the way they can run, and they have the size to make plays in the passing game. Cam Brown was just unbelievable on the goal line stand. We keep calling it a 4.
It's not really, though.
It's really only 3 because they're busy.
Right.
I think the Penn State fan base might want to send flowers to maybe the office in Pittsburgh for that decision to kick the field goal on 4th and goal from
not backing down from it, Bob.
From the 12-inch line. But I mean, I think some people are frustrated because they don't see a lot of splash plays. They don't see a lot of turnovers. Greg, a dominant defense in college football, you're going to give up points. You just are.
Yeah, absolutely.
A great defense makes the plays when they have to be. That's what a great defense is. They're not going to make them the whole game. Sometimes the offense is going to have a great game plan. They're going to script the first 10 to 15 plays just to try and make you look bad. So it's going to be a game of adjustments, but I just don't know how much. When you look at the scoreboard, 30 points in 3 games. I know they didn't play a great team at the start. The only thing I would say about the defense is they got to be smarter on 3rd and long. They've been killed with screens. If you look at the Pitt game and how many escapes Pickett made when they had him, dead to rights. He either extended plays or was 3rd and 16 and they made a play. There was a pass interference call or a hold on John Reed, I think, when they were going to get ready to close out the game as well. They've been so close to playing better. They just have to get better and more aware on 3rd down. I don't know if it starts with Brent Pry and the calls or the players, what to expect, but they do the hard part to me. And it's the easy part that's actually they're fumbling that opportunity.
Yeah, no doubt about it. You're listening to the Penn Live Penn State Blitz podcast, or you're watching the Penn Live Penn State Blitz video. If you're listening to the podcast, like, rate, or subscribe. Apple, Stitcher, you name it, it's there. Google. If you're watching the video, subscribe to the YouTube page, youtube.com/allpennstate. Just one last thought for me on the defense, Bob. I think you nailed it. It's finishing at this point. It seems like, Brent Pry's system's been in place long enough now. This coaching staff's been together on that side of the ball long enough now. The players know what to expect. You're right. It seems like too often over the first 3 weeks, Idaho excluded because that was just not really worth revisiting. But you're right. They do the hard part to get to what should be the easy part, and they have not, taken advantage of that easy as often as they should have.
If you think about it, it's really a good sign.
It is,
because eventually they're going to learn how to make life easier for themselves, and hopefully they can do it against some good teams. Hopefully they can do it on the road. But to me, I think it's got to be a glass half full.
I think we're glass half full offense and defense.
When you can get to the point where they are in games and just for the quirkiest of reasons not being able to finish it, I think it bodes well, because I think that's a step that you can accomplish. That's an easy step that you can kind of address, solve, whatever you want to say. I think they should feel pretty good about themselves. I do think I'm anxious to see how this team plays on the road. I don't think, we can talk about it next week. I don't think the Maryland environment's going to be easy for them, even though they've really destroyed this program in the last 2 years. This is a different year. This is a different team, different coaching staff. But I just think the Friday night game is looming as a very interesting game. And I think they need a test like this. Incrementally, they've gotten tested a little bit more each week.
Right.
And this is what it's like, if you're going to succeed in the Big Ten East. I think this Maryland challenge is better than the Pitt challenge at home. And then if you look at the schedule after that, it's only going to get deeper and deeper and deeper, the tests. So I think this is what Penn State and Franklin, if they're going to struggle early. If they're going to have issues, have them now. Now you have a week to fix them, because now, there's not too many breathers on the schedule. I think Rutgers might be one, Indiana might be another, but it's just not going to be an easy gauntlet for them to run.
Purdue's a breather too.
All right, well, 6
points against TCU. Come on.
Okay, we'll give them Purdue. We're going to give them Purdue. That's you talking, not me. So let's talk about...
If anyone can get to Purdue, noon start, Beaver Stadium, homecoming.
That's right.
I don't know if anybody will make it to the game.
That is a traffic issue. We could actually do a traffic podcast.
We might.
I think we'd get a lot of likes and listens, because we would probably have the same experiences that the fan base has had trying to get to the Pittsburgh game. There were some recruits at the Pittsburgh game. One from Susquehanna Township, who's a commit, Fatuma Moba.
You got it.
Defensive tackle for the Susquehanna Township Indians, right in our own backyard. Just kind of the big picture for the recruiting, not only for this class and the 2021 class. Where are they? What do you like about it? What should the fan base kind of be looking for the final couple months?
Yeah, it was a tough go for that Pitt game from a recruiting perspective, because just like some fans were stuck and on the way into the game, fans, media, whatever, recruits were too. And it sounds like that Atherton entrance is the one that's really a problem for people. It seems like some of the other lots are working a little bit better. So we'll see if Penn State can clean that up. But on the recruiting front real quick, decent non-conference opportunity to host some kids, but September can be tough. You do get that night game prime time, which was helpful. They get Zuriah Fisher, the Alakipa 3-star. Is he a defensive end? Is he a linebacker at the next level? He plays middle linebacker right now. I think he's going to be in that Nick Tarburton conversation, Bob, of he looks like he could keep the weight to stay at linebacker now. He might get there, get on that strength and conditioning and nutrition plan, and all of a sudden blow up into a big defensive end. So I think you're probably talking maybe him going more the Tarburton way as opposed to the Parsons way. We'll have to wait and see. They lose R.J. Adams, 3-star offensive lineman from Virginia. He was taken off the commitment list posted by 247 Sports and Rivals this week.
Penn State's they're only really interested in 5-stars from Virginia. That's been pretty clear. If you're not going to be like a 5-star, I guess you just don't waste Penn State's time. They only want the 5-stars.
Yeah, they have the kid from Atlee, Virginia, the 3-star tight end, but he actually has picked up some pretty interesting.
He'll be a 4-star
evaluations, so far. So that's it, though, on the recruiting front. They'll use the bye week to get out on the road and see some more kids, some more prospects, but they're going to have their normal Sunday practice Saturday this week to stay on schedule with the Friday night game, and then have an off day on Sunday instead of Monday. So I'm not sure they'll get on the road as much as normal.
Saturday practice. What if you're a Penn State player? What could be better than that on a bye week?
Absolutely nothing.
So in terms of the rankings, where are they roughly? Are they top?
They're
12, top 10?
They're gonna trend between, as schools pick up commitments, they sometimes drop down toward the 20s. As they pick up commitments, they rise back toward the 10s. I would expect this class to settle in top 15. Now, if there's some surprise, I don't see any bad surprises on the horizon. You already lost Grant Toutant, Aaron Parks, R.J. Adams, Josh Moten, right? The rest of this class looks pretty darn solid. So I don't know if I see any bad surprises on the horizon. Maybe you get a couple good ones that bump you into the top 10, but this looks like a top 15 class at this point in time.
I'm just gonna ask, is there any chance, even like a 1% chance, is Julian Fleming, Southern Columbia. Are the dishes done as far as
I think so, yeah.
He's going to Ohio State.
I think so, yeah, at this point. I do.
Not even a 1% chance.
I mean, no, it's recruiting, so you always have to have a 1% chance, but that's as far as I'm willing to go. So 98 or 99% chance he goes to Ohio State.
There's a chance.
I'll say there's a chance.
Movie lines. That's all I'm gonna. I don't want to sidetrack.
Recruiting
this podcast,
is recruiting, Bob.
And just to follow up on what you said, make sure you guys rate this podcast. Good, bad, ugly, indifferent. If you want to rate Greg and I separately, I can live with it. I could be dragging this podcast down. I don't know. I am open to constructive criticism. So please do, if you like it, please let us know. If you have any questions or concerns, please rate the Penn State Blitz podcast. We're just kind of getting started with it. It's only going to get better. This is the bye week, and we're already nailing it. So speaking of that, we're in
Mailbag.
We're in quarter number 4, the mailbag. Fan favorite. I have a couple questions for you.
Okay.
I'm sure you have a couple for me, so let's get to it.
All right, I'll kick it off with Tommy Stevens, who was on the Adam Brenneman podcast recently. We're going to talk a little bit more about the transfer portal in the second half. Second half of this podcast, different video on youtube.com/allpennstate. So, but Bob, heard some thoughts from him.
Yeah.
I would say him leaving Penn State to earn a starting job at Mississippi State, I would characterize his comments as that being bittersweet in his mind. Would you agree?
Yeah, I mean, it was, a lot of positive feedback for him. And kudos to Adam for kind of getting him on the record, a friend of his. He hasn't really been... Those are really his first remarks, I think, since on the record, really addressing, the decision.
Right.
It's obviously it wasn't easy for him. He kind of went out of his way to say he wasn't scared of the challenge. He just looked at the situation. He looked at Penn State's situation. Didn't necessarily felt like they lined up, because sometimes when you're Penn State, you're looking to not only the present but the future.
Right.
Which very much was probably either going to be Sean Clifford or Will Levis. I know it wasn't an easy decision for him to make. I think Penn State fans will always wonder what he might have been able to do as a starter for 1 year, but I don't know that there was any guarantee that he would have been the starter for the whole season. Sean Clifford's played well. It's one of those things we're never really going to know about, but I just think that it was nice for him to kind of address the situation a little bit and maybe get a little bit of closure. I think maybe he needed it, and maybe the Penn State fans needed to hear something about it. Yeah,
I agree. That pretty much closes the book on that, because, Tommy Stevens' dad was the one that was doing much of the talking back when he first went into the portal. Joe Moorhead, for good reasons, didn't want to talk much about the situation when Stevens got there. He didn't want Stevens to be made available to talk about it because he wanted to keep it as normal as possible. He's been okay, not great so far. But, I take it as everything was on, all the cards were on the table. Penn State couldn't name him the starter after spring practice. Tommy didn't feel like that was the best path to starting, so he went to Mississippi State, where he thought it was a better path, and it worked out for him.
Yeah. All right, I have a question for you.
Okay.
Have you ever seen Neil Rudell of the Altoona Mirror more angrier than he was on Twitter and in the press box over the parking situation?
Yeah.
That's just not going away.
So,
noon start at Beaver Stadium, new parking arrangement where you can only go one way 4 hours before the game. It's great when it works, but they don't have all the glitches ironed out yet. And if you came up the wrong road at the wrong time, you just sat and sat and sat and sat.
Yeah.
Very frustrating. Hopefully they can fix it, but Neil was pretty upset.
Yeah, Neil was angry, and I guess with good reason. It took him, 2 hours to get from Altoona to his parking spot in State College. I see it like this. It sounds like, from what we've heard, that maybe 3 of the 4 new entryways are okay, or 2.5.
So
of the
north,
3.
east, south, and west. If you were on the west side,
the west is the problem with Atherton, because you got construction. You got one side trying to make a right-hand turn, the other side trying to make a left-hand turn. Keep in mind, when you come off that Innovation Park exit, everyone's looping around in the one place. You might sit on that exit, or you might sit on 99 for a little bit, but at least everyone's trying to all go the same way, and there's no construction up there that I'm aware of. Atherton, you have construction.
Lights.
You have lights. You have 2 different turn directions. I mean, it's built for failure. And, it took us quite some time to get from Rec Hall to Park Avenue, and we had left plenty early. So I don't know. I've heard some good reviews from people who say, hey, we left early. We left early before the one-way started. We did this, we did that. And I get it. But they were never going to please everyone with this plan. I'm just not sure the Atherton thing is ironed. At the very least, make it just straight green, no lights. Just you're going to change the traffic patterns until the kickoff starts and make it. I don't know what they do. They're paying someone a lot of money.
You're flabbergasted right now. I can tell.
I'm not a parking expert. Or they're paying a company a lot of money to be parking experts. I'm not sure they nailed it so far.
Okay, let's get back to the football side of it. Although that was a good vent, I think it was deserved. A lot of people are frustrated, so hopefully they can get the glitches worked out. It wasn't just us that had to wait. A lot of people had to wait for no apparent reason. What's your next question?
The biggest disappointment for you so far after 3 games of 2019 Penn State football, besides parking, is what?
To me, I don't know if it's a disappointment that their struggles on third down.
Yeah.
They're just not firing it all on third down. A lot of it is because they've been in a lot of third and longs or third and not so manageables. They're not in 3rd and 1 and 3rd and 2 very often. James talked about it. They're aggressive on 1st and 2nd down. When the big plays don't come, though, that leaves them vulnerable on 3rd down.
Right.
I think the 3rd down issue has probably been the thing that probably sticks out to me the most. I think the defense. I don't really have a lot of issues with the defense, and fans just have to remember that they've made a conscious decision to play a lot of players, and that. The drop-off might be there a little bit through 3 games, but they are a much deeper team now going into the Big Ten season. Guys are experienced. They know what to expect. The starters haven't really played a lot of snaps. If you remember the last couple of years, Sharif Miller, those guys, they were out on the field for 65, 70 snaps, and now they're getting rotated in and out. I think it's going to be a fresher team. The 3rd down offense, though, that's something that James and Ricky have to work out. I think everyone plays a part in that, whether it's the offensive line, whether it's the receivers, whether it's Sean missing some throws. It can be better. And I think also I would say the running back rotation probably ties into that a little bit as well. They got to have their best running backs on the field on 3rd down. It's a critical down.
Yeah, no question. I think that the one thing you'll see more of, either in a positive way or a negative way, is, James can talk until he's blue in the face about how they're one of the better teams in the country on getting 1st downs on 1st and 2nd down. That's great, but you're not going to have that in every single game, every single series, and you better have some plays that work on 3rd down. It doesn't always look like they have those. Okay, one for you. After 3 games, what would you say about Justin Shorter's impact on the Penn State offense? Yeah, I think encouraging is the word that comes to mind. He's on the field a lot. When the ball doesn't always come his way, Bob, but when it does, he catches it. And I think he's been one of their more consistent guys in that regard. Is he still working on getting open more efficiently and more quickly? Yeah, I think so, but that'll come with time. I think he's been A-okay thus far. Okay. Is that it? Is that all the mailbag questions we have this week? Just one more. Saturday plans for it's your bye week, Greg. Can you share with the audience? Maybe are you going to stay local? Is Lola, your golden retriever, involved? Like, what's going to happen? Rest, relaxation, and the dog will enjoy plenty of playtime on Saturday as we watch college football from noon until midnight. We got some picks coming up on the other side of this, if I'm not mistaken. That answer did not make for great podcasting or video viewing. Just so you know, I didn't want the PG version. I wanted a little real life Greg Pickle. I guess we'll never know. Well, if we can find some beverage companies to sponsor this podcast, maybe we'll be more interested in sharing those thoughts. Oh, that would be great. That would be great. All right, that's it for the video portion of the Penn State Blitz. The Penn State podcast moves on.